She said, "I need space to find myself. Please don't take it personally." I said, "Take all the time you need." But the private investigator found her in a cabin with another man. My name is Ethan, I'm 33, and until a few months ago, I truly believed I was living the kind of life most people only dream about. I had a steady career in architecture, a cozy home just outside of Denver, a dog named Milo who followed me everywhere, and a girlfriend named Claire who I thought I'd grow old with. We'd been together for 4 years, through promotions, layoffs, family losses, and the kind of small moments that quietly build a life. Our nights were filled with homemade pasta, shared Spotify playlists, and whispers in the dark about baby names and backyard gardens. I never imagined I'd wake up one day and realize she was slipping away from me right in front of my eyes. It was a Tuesday morning in late October. The air was cold, the sky covered in that pale gray that makes everything feel still. I woke up alone in our bed, which wasn't unusual. Claire was always up before me, sitting on the porch with her coffee, watching the fog roll in through the trees. But that morning, something felt different the moment I stepped outside. She was sitting there with her blanket around her shoulders, her eyes locked on something far away like she was already somewhere else. I sat down beside her, reached for her hand, and asked if everything was okay. She looked at me, took a deep breath and said, "I need space to find myself. Please don't take it personally." The words hit me like a tidal wave, but I didn't show it. I just sat there, frozen, trying to understand. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She explained that she wasn't ending things, she just needed time. Time away from everything. From me, from our routine. She said she felt lost, like she'd forgotten who she was, and she needed a break to reconnect with herself. "It's not about you," she said. "I love you. I just need this time to think, to breathe." And I believed her, or at least I wanted to. I nodded slowly and said, "Take all the time you need. Because what else do you say when the person you love asks for space?" She packed that afternoon. Only a small duffel bag, a few books, her journal, and the blue hoodie she always wore when she was anxious. She told me she'd booked a remote cabin somewhere in the mountains for a week, maybe 2. She hugged me tight before leaving, kissed my forehead, and promised, "This isn't forever." I watched her drive away until her car disappeared into the trees, holding onto her words like a fool holding a rope that was already fraying. For the first 2 days, I tried to stay strong. I took Milo on long walks, cleaned the house, cooked dinners for one, and told myself she'd come back clearer, lighter, still mine. But something didn't sit right. It wasn't just the suddenness of it all. It was the way she'd avoided eye contact, the hesitation in her voice, the hollow sound in her goodbye. On the 3rd day, my doubts became too loud to ignore. I couldn't sleep, I couldn't think, and the silence in our house was crushing. That's when I did something I never imagined I'd do. Something I'm not proud of, but something I don't regret. I hired a private investigator. The investigator's name was Mark, a quiet, older man in his 50s with a sharp eye and a calm voice that made you feel like he'd seen everything there was to see in this world. I found him through a discreet agency after spending one too many hours staring at the last message Claire had sent me. Something about her words kept echoing in my head. Not just what she said, but how she said it. It didn't feel like a search for herself. It felt like an exit. I gave Mark what little information I had, the make and model of her car, the first half of the address she'd mumbled before leaving, and the timeline she gave me. He didn't ask many questions. He just nodded and said, "I'll let you know what I find." For 3 days I heard nothing. I went to work but didn't really work. I sat in meetings but didn't hear a word. I came home and stared at her empty mug on the counter, at her shoes still sitting by the door, at the dog who kept waiting for her at the window. Every vibration from my phone made my heart race, but the silence that followed made it sink even lower. Then, on the 4th day, Mark called. "I found her," he said. "You may want to sit down." I remember the weight of that sentence, how everything in me went still like my body knew what was coming before my mind did. He sent photos. Claire's car was parked outside a small wooden cabin tucked away deep in the pines. far more remote than she'd described. The cabin looked like something out of a magazine, rustic, secluded, and clearly meant for two. And then came the part that made my blood run cold. She wasn't alone. The pictures showed her on the porch laughing with a man I didn't recognize. A man who wasn't me. A man who touched her like he'd done it 100 times before. One frame showed them holding hands. Another showed her sitting on his lap, smiling like she'd forgotten I even existed. That's when everything inside me cracked open. Mark told me he'd followed them into town once. They had dinner at a small local diner, sat side by side in a booth meant for lovers. She wore her hair the way I loved it, in a loose braid over one shoulder, and she laughed like she had no one waiting for her back home. The man kissed her hand as they walked back to the car. Not a quick gesture. Not a mistake. Something intimate. Something real. My chest felt tight, like I couldn't breathe. I asked Mark to keep watching, just in case this was some horrible misunderstanding. Maybe it was a cousin, a friend, something innocent. But deep down, I knew. I knew the woman I loved had lied to my face, walked out the door saying she needed to find herself, when all along she was running into the arms of another man. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in our bedroom, surrounded by her things, playing the memories like a film I didn't want to watch but couldn't turn off. Every "I love you" felt like a joke now. Every moment we shared felt stained. How long had this been going on? Was she already with him when we were planning our future? Did she ever mean any of it? These questions pounded through my mind as I held the photos in my hands, staring at the smiling woman who used to be my home. I didn't cry. Not yet. There was a kind of hurt that lived beyond tears. A silence so heavy it just swallowed you whole. The next morning, I called Mark and told him to stop. I'd seen enough. I knew what I needed to know. She wasn't lost. She wasn't searching. She was exactly where she wanted to be, and it wasn't with me. She returned the following Monday, just as she'd promised, like nothing had happened. Her car pulled into the driveway a little after noon, and I watched from the window as she stepped out with that same duffel bag, her hair pulled back, her expression calm. She looked like someone coming back from a spa retreat, not a week of infidelity in a hidden cabin. I didn't say anything right away. I just watched her walk through the door, set her bag down, and smile at me like I was still the man she loved. "Hi," she said softly, as if her absence hadn't torn me apart inside. "I missed you." I stared at her for a long moment, my heart a mess of fire and ice. There was a time when I would have pulled her into my arms without a second thought, just happy to have her home. But that time had passed. Now I knew the truth. Now I saw her for who she really was. A woman capable of looking me in the eyes and lying with a smile on her lips. "Did you find what you were looking for?" I asked, my voice steady, though every word scraped my throat like broken glass. She paused, blinked, and gave a sad little laugh. "I think so," she said. "It was good to be alone. I did a lot of thinking." That's when I handed her the envelope, thick, heavy, and sealed with the weight of everything I'd learned. Inside were the photos the investigator had taken. Her at the cabin. Her with the other man. Her wrapped in his arms while I sat at home waiting for her to come back and love me again. Her fingers shook as she opened it. Her smile vanished. The room went cold. She didn't speak at first, just stared at the pictures like they were evidence from a crime scene. And maybe they were. A crime against trust. Against us. Against everything we were supposed to be. "I trusted you," I said quietly, not yelling, not crying, just letting the words land. "I gave you space because I believed you needed to heal, to reflect, to breathe. But you lied. You walked away not to find yourself, but to be with him." She tried to speak, but I held up my hand. Don't insult me with an excuse." Her eyes filled with tears, but I didn't care anymore. I'd already cried enough for both of us. I'd already been the one left in the dark, wondering if I was enough. And now I knew I was. She just wasn't worth the love I gave her. She begged for a second chance. Said she didn't know what she was thinking. Claimed she got scared. That it meant nothing. That she'd ended it before coming home. That she wanted to try again. But I was done living in her fantasy. I told her she had 24 hours to pack her things and leave. That I'd already spoken to a lawyer. That this house, this life, this chapter, it was over. And for the first time in our entire relationship, she had nothing left to say. That evening, I sat on the porch with Milo beside me, watching the sun dip below the pines. The same spot where she told me she needed time to find herself. Only now I understood. She was never lost. She just didn't want to be found by me. And that was okay, because I was done searching for someone who was already gone. Sometimes the greatest peace comes not from answers, but from finally accepting the truth. If you've ever been lied to by someone you loved, hit that subscribe button. You deserve the truth, too.